started in film in New Zealand in the mid-70s when the whole New Zealand film industry was just starting. And I was finishing a degree in architecture and I had to do like a final year project. I thought, well, I'll do it as a film. And I got a book on how to make films. Lenny Lipton's book on independent filmmaking probably still has a lot of relevant information. And borrowed a Bolex from the Elam and bought some film and went out and made an incredibly bad film by myself, pretty much, with occasionally more and more help, but I learned an awful lot about it. I learned I really liked doing it. What was terrific about that film, and I think it does look pretty amazing, is that it was shot on a film stock that I don't think they make anymore, a 400 or 500 ASA reversal film called 7250. And it was video news film. It was developed in the 1970s by Kodak to be a high-speed film for reporters to use at night, because that was obviously the challenge, when the film speed was only 100 ASA. And this film was fantastic. Just before video took over from film as the main news medium, it was a fantastic film because it was like Ektachrome. And it really would get the colors were really intense, the blacks are inky black, but it would definitely, record in, the lights of a city at night. She just finished art school in Auckland and was on her way to go to Australian Film and TV School in Sydney. And when I later worked with her on the films we did together, she said, "You guys were mean to me." And she said, "The thing I resented most was when I was trying to stop traffic and you wanted to show me how to hold the stop sign." Bruno's wife, as she was, Anna, had to storm into the hubcap room and have a big fight with him, and she wanted to be really mad, and I was just like hanging around outside the set, having done all my stuff, plugged in the lights, and she said, she was French, I think, she had this accent, she said, when they say action, you have to hold me back. I go, what? Yeah. Oh, okay. So I had that was my first introduction to method acting, oh my God, I've got to stop this, and tried very hard to stop her from running into the room, and then she ran in and off they went. Pretty intense stuff for a very inexperienced young film technician. Vincent Ward's Vigil was very significant for me because it was sort of the first time I got the opportunity to exercise my own lighting. Al Bollinger is the DP of the film, and very rightly so. But Alan, he said to me, and we'd worked together on several films by then, that he wanted to work, he was going to operate the camera, and he wanted to work with Vincent very closely on story. And so he wanted me to step up and take more responsibility for the lighting. Vincent's one of these uber prepared filmmakers. And every department had a reference book. I had a folder this thick of Xeroxed pictures and images that relate to lighting for different parts of the stories, which is fantastic. And so it meant that I was being asked to be more like, to be honest, what a European or American gaffer does as a matter of course. And then it came out really beautiful. And there were times I could look at dailies and go, oh. Okay, I did that. We shot it in black and white original film, and we shot it almost entirely on a set. So that the kitchen, the bathroom, the hallway, and the bedroom were built on a tiny stage in Auckland, a warehouse stage, I guess it was. I think we couldn't afford to build the windows for this room, so we shot a scene in a house in Balmoral somewhere that had this beautiful bow window, which and I borrowed all the lights. I had 2 old Barton 5Ks and 2 Mini Brutes and 3 blondes, and I just lined them all up around this bay window and just blew them all in. It's just this massive, messy light. It looks terrific. I meet film professors here who say it's a teaching tool for them. They use it when they're introducing the whole concept of storytelling in a film, because it's such a great little story in 10, 15 minutes, and so clear and so well intentioned and well resolved. Bridget and Jane talked and invited me to come in and meet, and Jane and I got on very well, laughed about our experiences on Queen Street, and we went to work on it. She had quite a body of work behind her, and she was feeling very ready to flex and to do good work. She knew how to work with actors, she knew how to rehearse, she knew how to organise the structure of a film, and so I was learning a lot from her. At the same time, I was invited to contribute, which was fantastic. We were going to shoot most of the film in the North Island, around Auckland, for economic reasons. And Jane, of course, wanted it to look like the South Island, which is where Janet grew up. And we talked about what were the things that we felt visually made the North Island different from the South Island. One of the things was that the North Island, particularly Auckland, Waikato, is intensely green. And when you're in Central Otago or those areas, Southland, there's a lot more of that sort of burnished tussock. And well, how do we approach that? And one of the ideas we came up with was to use a technique that I've been using a lot in TV commercials, using these coral filters, which are a warm, pinky orange filter, which we put on the camera. And it takes a lot of the green out of the picture. It's also very nice on skin tones, and of course, it really emphasizes red, so that the hair really pops, particularly on the little Janet. And there was some tricks too. We had some good trick photography. We did some nice candlelight flickering stuff, in Spain, when the two sisters come into the room with candles and they move around the room, and we did it with a series of, Danny, who was my gaffer, had everything on dimmers, and we'd dim something up, and as they moved from one part of the room to the other and faded out, and everything had a little flicker on it, somebody was just tweaking the dimmer. And we did a fake view across a moonlit bay at night with a sheet of mylar and a black cardboard cutout and little twinkling lights, and the mylar had a sheen to it, and we just would tap it, so it had like a little shimmer to it, and it really looked like water. I mean, it was really good old-fashioned trick photography. I think Jane she's a wonderful conundrum. She is as complicated as you might like to think she is, from the strangeness and the sometimes darkness of her work. She's also one of the most straightforward, down-to-earth, loving human beings you could ever want to know, which I think is also apparent in her work. When we made the piano, I don't know if we knew it was Oscar-worthy. I don't think it ever occurred to us. That just seemed like a whole different realm. But I do think, I know, that we thought we were making something really, really special, really good. I mean, the performances were unbelievably cool. There was quite literally that much liquid mud surrounding the house, which meant that all that idea of getting the heavy equipment up there, well, that was as far as it got. You had to carry the dolly and the lights and everything manually through this mud, and it was such sucking mud that you would pull your gumboots off. It was that kind of mud. We had to build stepping stones. We had to carry Holly in sometimes because she had those little beautiful Victorian boots on. She couldn't walk through the mud. When Lee called me up and said they've asked me to direct Once Were Warriors, I'd like you to shoot it. I mean, that's great. And I said, so what are we doing? Sort of, Ken Loach, modern, doco-drama? He said, oh, no. We're going to shoot like a movie. It's going to have great lighting. The people are going to look beautiful. It's going to be accessible. We're going to keep the coverage simple. we're going to shoot it kind of like a TV show, actually. Not to denigrate it, but you know, it's going to be very straightforward storytelling. And everyone's going to get it. And he was 100% right. The scene I remember as most violent in Once Were Warriors was when Bully, you know, Tim's character is beating up Red Owen after the party, after she declines to make eggs. Make the man some fucking eggs. And then all hell breaks loose, you know. And what was very interesting, the way we shot that was super fast. We basically shot him in a couple of hours. There's like only 4 or 5 shots in that sequence as he beats her around the house. And we just basically started in the kitchen, and we just kept doing it in pieces. He hit her, she hit the floor, we'd turn around, do it the other way, pick her up, that way. All handheld, just moving the camera very quickly from spot to spot, not taking time to light. So that the actors got into the energy of it and could, like, you know, because it's intense. It's a story that is very specifically about a bunch of people living in South Auckland at a certain time. And yet it is also a completely universal story that I've met people all over the world from all kinds of different cultures who've seen that movie. And particularly people who grew up in working class or poor families where there was substance abuse and all that kind of stuff. They've gone, wow, that story was that's my life, that film. You know, it's a really universal tale. And yet it wasn't setting out to be universal, it was setting out to tell, and I think this is a real lesson to anyone, particularly in regional film industries. You know, tell what you know, work with the people you know, and the big stuff will come. But don't try and tell a universal story. Don't try and, you know, which I think, sadly, you know, people often do try and do, you know, try and make something that will appeal to an American audience, for example. Don't do it. It's wrong, and it doesn't work. It never works. When I first saw the script, I went, I just have to do this. Such an amazing piece of writing. And then, of course, meeting Brad, who had made one very, very good short film, but really, you know, that was it. So confident, so clear about his intentions, so amazing at working with his actors. I mean, it was, in a weird way, one of the easiest films I've ever been involved in, because the actors were so well prepared and Brad was so focused. We did very few takes. It was quite an extraordinary experience. It was, yeah, it was hard and fast, but it was immensely pleasurable. You know, there's that sort of, that great New Zealand story about World War II where the British commander was brought into the New Zealand infantry camp and drove through in his jeep and drove through stiffly. He said to his, he was fuming, and he said, you know, I drove through the entire camp and saluted. Not one man saluted, and the adjutant said, no, but if he'd waved and said hi, they'd have waved back. See, that's what I think that's what we're like. And so I don't think we like all that sort of hierarchy and sitting at the big table and, you know, and I've found by and large American crews I've worked with respond to that, and that makes my job easier, makes it more pleasurable. A lot of DPs like to operate the camera whenever they can. And in New Zealand it's probably still more common that that's just what you do. In the UK and in the US there's often, for whatever reasons, union reasons or just economies of scale, you quite often work with a camera operator. But the person who's actually looking through the camera, I always like to say you're the first person to see the movie.